What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to work on my brother's brown supercharged K all-wheel drive wagon, and I will say that before we get to the unboxing of this giant package from S1Built, there's a lot of things we need to change in the engine bay to accommodate that. So we're going to be switching some things up because we want to take this car back to the dyno to make some more power. Now, if you guys remember the last update to this car, we did the Max Pinion Rod T7 coilovers. Shout out to Max Pinion Rod for sending those out to upgrade my brother's suspension from the SP1. And the car rides really well. Aside from needing to go to the alignment shop, the car rides really well. The update before that, we installed a new transmission from the old school Capital, and the car finally now shifts smoothly. We finally have second gear after 7 years, and honestly, the car is ready to go the way it is right now. But like I said, my brother wants to make a little more power and have a little bit more handling, which is why we've been doing all the upgrades here in between. And the last big thing we need to install into the car is that guy right there. The car currently right now is on a conservative tune at about 7 PSI on the CT Engineering Supercharger stock K20 Z3 with a restricting header, which is this guy right here, to a 2 1/4 outlet on a 2.5 exhaust. Now the pulley is originally meant for about 10-11 PSI, and again, it's only giving us 7 PSI. Small throttle body, small outlet on the exhaust. This thing is really not breathing because we're putting a lot of air in, and it's just not farting out as fast as the intake. So we're going to be doing some changes here in the bay. I do have a spare 70 mil throttle body we're probably going to change out. I'm probably going to make a bigger intake because there is literally a dynograph on YouTube that compares a 3-inch to a 3.5 to a 4-inch intake, and the bigger you go, the little more horsepower gains you get. And I figured, you know what, let's just make a new one while we're at it. So probably gonna do a new intake. We're gonna be changing out this right here, which is what's in that box. And before we even pull this one off and install the new one, we're gonna have to change all the stuff that's on the firewall. Now, when I did this in 2017, I did, however, we needed to get it done to get this into the car. And now looking back at it, I mean, looking back at it, I was barely, new into K-swap, but now looking at it, I'm like, okay, well, I should have just done this a different way, years before end. But regardless of the fact, we're going to take care of it. So all of the stuff we're going to be touching today. Brake lines, I'm not sure if we need to move it or, build new lines. Heater hoses, we're going to reroute them because I don't know why I did T's on T's on T's. And the fuel pressure regulator is going to change as well too, because if this car ever goes to the track, NHRA rules does not allow fuel pressure regulator on the firewall. So I just went through all of my box, totes, organizers of AN fittings and hoses. I took a quick little look on the fuel pressure setup to kind of get an idea of how I was going to route it. I already know how I'm going to route it, but more so just trying to figure out all the fittings that I'm going to need to make this change. And it looks like I may need to order some stuff, but it's not going to stop me from just kind of placing the fuel pressure regulator where I need it to be and just kind of have it done and out of the way. So that means the car will be out of commission for a little bit, but you know what I'm saying, we're making progress. There goes everything, but the regulator is off, and this does have a vacuum line to it. So I took off the feed line right here, which came off the firewall, feed into the fuel pressure regulator, and then we have one line coming out that went to the fuel rail, and then we have the bottom that returns. Now typically on a stock car, they have one line that goes into the fuel rail, like the factory 8th gens or the RSX. And usually for a force inducted car to be able to hold pressure like up top RPMs, you want to do a feed in feed out system. So originally I had popped this off because I was gonna block it out where the fuel pressure regulator is going to be sitting on the driver's side tower. I was going to block this off, and then I was going to have a feed into the fuel rail, and then out of the rail to the regulator, and then regulator return to the tank. One of my main issue with trying to run a feed into the fuel rail is this is really tight to put any type of fittings here. So obviously this will need to be converted over to a -6, which is going to stick out another 1/2 inch, and there's literally no room to put a fitting there. Now I don't have the fitting that goes in the bottom of this fuel rail, and then yet alone have space to even put a fitting on that, like a 90 to go this way or that way, because the supercharger's kind of bulky down here. So that is the reason why I'm kind of opting to keep it one feed line in. But I really want to do feed in, feed out system. So I might try to figure something out with this. All right, I think I got it. So I have a spare -8 orb O-ring to a -6 male, and it just so happened to be the same thread fitting for the Carcept center feed, and I have a 90 on it right now just to test it, because this is a PTFE, and I'm probably gonna run a regular hose, but if I don't have regular hose, PTFE I got plenty. So if I just put this back on, seat it to the spacer, right, flush, this actually just sits on top of the base plate for the supercharger, so it looks like it'll fit, and I think that's gonna work. So I'm just gonna go ahead and just build this entire shebang so we can move on to the next thing, and hopefully this works out. Little fuel filter bracket. Quick update on the fuel system relocation. Turns out I had almost all of the fittings to make the feed and the line to the rail, but I don't have enough from the rail to the return line on the firewall right there. So I dug every freaking nook and cranny in my garage to find fittings, and I ended up just robbing the fittings that I bought for the wagon's turbo setup. So right here from the firewall, I bent this hard line that used to point straight to point towards the passenger side, which tucked it close to the firewall, made a line that goes from here to the filter, and then put a little heat sleeve over this line just in case it comes close to the header, which you guys will see later. And we have the filter mounted right there on a bracket that I made that goes to the ground 10 mil right there. This guy is not going anywhere. And then from the filter all the way to the fuel rail, I did bend that 90 right there up just a little bit to clear the supercharger, and we got plenty of space, plenty of clearance. The fuel rail is fully secured, and then this line right here is the original line that went from here to the firewall, and I didn't change any of the fittings. Why? Because if I did a straight on this side, it'll point the fuel line like kind of oddly looking right there, and I just left the 45 and 90 to kind of tuck it more this way. So 45, 90, vacuum line tied in together right there. I just dropped the car back onto the ground. I drained the entire cooling system, so there should be a little bit of coolant left, and I just want to give you guys a look on the heater hose situation before I just go and do it. So this car obviously has the heater hoses, heater core, everything works in this car. We have the heater valve, which turns on the hot and cold. And for this car, honestly, if you're really running the heater, you're just running the heater, which you're, obviously shooting for hot temp. And if you want to run chill, cold, air, whatever the case is, roll your freaking windows down, right? So I'm just going to simplify this and remove the heater valve altogether, so that way I can make both these hoses, top and bottom, just 90 off the firewall, go towards the driver to go to their destination, just so we can eliminate all of this. I'm not gonna go buy new hoses, so I'm probably just going to I'm probably just gonna clip this U right here and just use the 90 off of that and adapt it to the current heater hoses to get them to go where we need to go. So the goal is to eliminate the heater hoses in this general area. So this side right here with the 10 mil nut, which is threaded, this part goes to the bracket on the prop right here. I'm using a 10 millimeter bolt, really short one, probably 1/4 inch of threads. That goes into there. The reason for the short bolt is because I welded the open end of the nut and a longer bolt wouldn't go through. It'll just strip. That was my fault. Then I'm using a 10 millimeter bolt right here for the top, which is going to secure the new rod bracket to the fuel filter bracket on the firewall. So you can see it's far off, thumb size gap, and all I'm really doing here is pushing the prop down until we get the holes lined up, and then we're gonna put the 10 millimeter bolt in there. Make sure you thread it first before you shoot it in, because that's the greatest way to strip these holes out. And now we can tighten it down. There we go. There we go. Prop valve secured and way lower, and now we have all the space up here where the prop valve used to sit and took up a lot of room. So that right there, guys, is the new position for the prop valve. You can see the heater hoses is now going towards the driver instead of like looping around right here on the subframe. And then we have our fuel system now going towards the passenger instead of sitting right here on the firewall. So now I'm gonna go ahead and jack the car back up so we can pop this header off the engine. My goodness, I don't remember how I got this header put in because it never came out after the fact, but had to remove a lot of stuff just to get it out. So I had to take off the oil filter, which is gone, and then I turned the wheel all the way to the right to knock the axle out of the half shaft. And the last thing I would have had to taken off was the half shaft, but getting the car jacked up super high, I was able to tilt the header all the way down to pull it out between the transfer case right there. Now if this was front wheel drive, probably wouldn't have any problem popping it out, but regardless, we have the header taken out, and now I got to clean all that mess from the oil filter coming off. All right, guys, so before I get started with unboxing the giant package, I did just make a parts run, and where is it at? I need this oil filter right here, and let me explain why. Now, if you guys don't remember, I mentioned that my brother's car has a 1-inch spacer on the EFK1 motor mounts. This spacer is to bring the engine low to get the supercharged to clear the hood, the SIR hood, because with the OEM one, it stuck out like an inch and a quarter or so. So with the spacers, the supercharger is now cleared of the hood, but the problem is it brings the engine down to where the oil filter actually sits in front of the subframe. And I literally had to smash the one that was on here before to get it out between the subframe. So if you look, there's no way I could put an OEM filter back on unless I smash the head, which I don't want to, or take off the motor mount to lower the engine to clear the subframe so we can put the filter on. I took the Wix filter off of my engine and I test fitted it last night because this is shorter than the OEM one, and it being shorter allows me to squeeze it in between the subframe to screw it in. That's about, it was like a little over 1/4 inch, just to give you guys an idea. Not 1/2 inch though, but with this one, it just goes right on. Easy peasy. So I'm gonna go ahead and lube up the seal, get this installed. All right, guys, the package we've all been waiting for. Let's go ahead and unbox this. Want to give a big shout out to S1Built, Son, and Mylin. Thank you guys for always helping me out on some of these builds. And I was in the market for something new for my brother's car, and I just really couldn't find anything out there that wasn't going to break the bank. Then I realized, after you know, watching a lot of the S1 videos on YouTube, if you guys haven't subscribed to them, be sure to hit the link in the description below. After seeing some of the videos, it clicked to me that S1 had this product. And as soon as I called up Son, we talked about it, and you know, I want to give a big shout out because he got it out so quickly, and we have it now. Let's go ahead and unbox it and show you guys what's inside. Remember, cut away from yourself, not towards yourself. All right, this is the first piece. This is the second one. We have the hardware. Woo. That is a big mumbo jumbo. All right, let's take a look into this S1 all-wheel drive, all-motor / supercharged header. This is probably one of the first in the market that's like right out of the box that will go onto a car that's either all-wheel drive converted. It may possibly fit the CR-V or the Honda Element, which came factory all-wheel drive. And I'm really liking this header because these are big tubes. Big tubes compared to like this DC Sport, which is the small tube. And this is more so for the bigger engine, like a K24 or a car that's making a lot of power. This was actually installed in Son's Bumblebee, his personal yellow EK, and all motor. It made 280 plus on E85, and it is currently supercharged. I don't know the numbers of this header on his engine supercharged because it was supposed to go to the dyno like last week or something. I haven't asked any questions to see if it did hit the dyno or not, but I'm sure this header would have made some really good, decent power, especially because the bottom collector is a 3-inch setup. What I like about this as well too is that this has a bellow and not a flex, which is like this one right here. And these typically, like, they break over time. A bellow, it's much more durable, and it is also fully welded inside and out. So this thing also comes with the V-band, and it does come with the opposite flange to connect to your exhaust or build a new exhaust system. But this header is, like I said, it's for an all-motor / supercharged setup for those who wants to go all-wheel drive but don't want to go forced induction, or just looking for, you know, a nice little kick, right? This header right here should make you some decent number, and obviously clear the transfer case. I like that they left this little spacer not welded to the header, because not only can you use this for an all-wheel drive swap car or a front-wheel drive, for the most part you can use it for a front-wheel drive car, but you can use this header for a rear-wheel drive setup. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, obviously this is a slip-in tube style, right? Not a flange of any sort, even if it was V-band, but it's not a hard flange like using bolts and nuts. You can mount this sideways or the other way, or whichever way you want to position it. And then once you fix it in the position you need it to be, then you take the little spacers and then you tack it onto the outlet of the header itself, so that way you can secure the bolts to ensure the downpipe don't slip off the header. So I like that they didn't weld the opposite end on. And you know, I feel like this is going to do a lot more justice than that one. And I say this because 3-inch downpipe, you know, bigger runner versus this little tiny runner, and then it goes to a 2 1/4 outlet, which is probably the reason why this car does not make a lot of power. These are available by S1. They do have a bunch of them in stock. So if you guys are interested in this same header right here for your all-wheel drive car, or front-wheel drive, or rear-wheel drive, be sure to use the link in the description below to get in contact with S1 and get you guys set up with one of these. And if you guys do decide to buy this or anything from the S1 website, be sure to use discount code provided down below as well too, to save a couple of bucks. So let's go ahead and test fit this in the car, see how it all works out for us, and let's try to get my brother's car buttoned up. Guys, we're running into a little dilemma. The reason why I say this is because I cannot squeeze the header all the way down because it needs to go back about 2 inches to clear the stud that's on the cylinder head right there. And we can't pull the header back because it's already hitting the firewall and the subframe down low right there. So I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to get this fitted in there without having to drop the engine, and I really do not want to do that. And on top of that, if I did get it to fit, the runner is actually sitting right on top of my prop valve and also my heater hoses. Okay, well, so I just got off the phone with Son, and he informed me that this header is actually designed based off the K-Swap CRX that he has in his shop, which is also his personal car. And I did take notice that his car is like completely shaved in the bay, which means there's no brackets on the firewall, which means there's no prop valve, no heater hoses, and it should clear without all of that. But in the case of us, it's a little different because prop valve is sitting right there, and my brother does want to keep his heater hoses. He also has innovative mounts, which probably positions the engine differently than the Hassport, and there's nothing I can do about that because what we have is what we're rocking. So I'm not entirely sure if I can get this header to work, nor do I want to modify it. And I know for a sure fact it fits in an EG. I've seen it. It fits in his EK. I've seen it, and most definitely will fit in his Integra as well too. But for my car, got to go back to the drawing board. So I didn't really want to do what I said I didn't want to do, but it looks like I'm gonna have to do it if I want to make this header work. So here's some progress for you guys. Down low, we have the subframe cut a little bit. You can kind of see where it starts right there on the subframe, about 1/4 of an inch, and I cut it all the way through, even through the Hassport mount right there on top of the subframe, and then I kind of curved it off right there because I don't need to go any further. I will clean that up. I will tack it up just so that the two is not going to separate, although it is already held by the spot wells right here on the subframe, right? So the reason for this is because the part of the header that hits that is not supposed to hit it. And I say this because there's a little curve right here that's kind of like meant for the subframe to clear the header itself, but because the engine is dropped 1 inch, it puts the header lower and the subframe hits it about right here, which is why we cut the subframe and the little bracket about 1/4 inch just to clear, right? And on top of that, I removed the studs right here, both of them, just so we can slip the header all the way down. I did take off the heater hoses just so we don't interfere with that. That's over here. And then the prop valve, I took it back off the firewall and swung it over to the passenger side. Now, this is not in the practical spot next to a header, which gets hot. You can probably get away with a heat shield, but it's too close for my liking. So I think if I'm gonna be running this header, I'm gonna redo the entire prop valve, find a new location, bend the lines, and reflare everything. The feed line for the fuel rail, this guy here, it's in a good spot, but I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get a longer sleeve just so we can sleeve this all the way to the filter, because this area it's not close, but it's kind of in line of the heat coming off the header. So I want to ensure that, you know, the heat sleeve is going to help it in a sense. That also goes for the heater hoses 90 coming off of this. I'm gonna have to heat sleeve it just so that the heater hoses itself don't get hot and get all brittle later down the road. I might even get rid of most of the hoses just to do all steel or aluminum, so that way it kind of cuts down the amount of rubber that's on here to, you know, deteriorate or, you know, get brittle over time. So with all of this I just explained to you guys, the header fits. Not too shabby. The header installed, and I'm trying to look down here, and we have clearance between the header and the subframe, and when the engine torques backward, the header is gonna it's gonna pull away from the subframe. So I'm not worried about it denting the header at all, and even if it does a little bit, not a big deal. So the heater hose is not fully in. You can see the barb right there. If I push it all the way in, it does kind of clear the runner over here. And if I kind of like zip it out of the way, it's not going to touch the header. And what I was talking about with the tubes was kind of cutting it off right here, adding a tube to kind of route it away from the header, and then reconnect it to the 90s right there, just so that, again, you know, if the heat projects off the header, it doesn't melt into the rubber. And I just got to figure out where I can buy tubings in aluminum or steel, but that's an idea. Over here, again, fuel line not coming close to the header. This should be okay. I've ran worse, but I do want to sleeve it all the way. I might even reroute the filter, not gonna lie, but you can see down low the prop valve definitely hitting the header. So the prop valve is definitely going to be moved, and I'm thinking of putting it in this corner. This is going to be a intricate task only because of how tight the space is, and I'm going to try my best to try to reuse the hard lines, and it's going to be a pain to try to double flare it in this little corner. Obviously with the header out, we only have it bolted with one right there and one in the corner, because this is going to come back out. I'm not entirely sure if I want to heat wrap it, which, you know, there's pros and cons of heat wrap, and I don't mind heat wrapping it, but I might want to Cerakote it. A buddy of mine runs a huge powder coating company out here, and I'm trying to get in contact with him to see if he does Cerakoting and if he could do Cerakoting for me. For the most part, top part of the header is my main goal, but you know, if it doesn't cost too much to do top and bottom, we'll just Cerakote both of it. But right now that's still up in the air between Cerakote and heat wrap, but I kind of want to, you know, Cerakote it just because it makes it look all nice and even. So the header again does clear just with minor mods because we're running that 1-inch spacer right there, but overall not too shabby, not too shabby. Now if you're tucked, or if you're in a different chassis that doesn't have a tight space like we do here in the EF, this header should not be a problem for you guys. So for the EF, definitely does work. This is the downpipe of the header, full 3-inch with a bellow and a V-band. It does come with the other flange like mentioned. This is a slip-on tube style, so you just pretty much slip it over the bottom half of the header. We're gonna push it all the way to the top just so we can have ground clearance, right? And then we can position the downpipe wherever we need it to go. So in this case, we're gonna shoot for the previous exhaust system, right? Somewhere there. We still have a lot of clearance between the flange of the transfer case and the drive shaft, like 2-finger. I mean, if you want to point it straight back, we'll have 3-finger, plenty of space. And I think I'm going to shoot for straight, just because I can see how the resonator is actually crooked and more closer to the drive shaft. So when we get the new exhaust system put on, we want to have clearance between the drive shaft and the 3-inch tubing, because this is currently, well, this is 3, but the exhaust system is actually 2.5. So let's, for an example, I'm gonna kind of position it right there. The flange that comes with the V-band, I'm not going to use this one because I don't want to have to booger weld it. I don't have any argon right now to TIG weld, which I'm not going to do in this video anyways, but I have plenty of spare flanges cut off from old downpipes that thrown away, and what I'm going to use is this transition, which is a 3 to 2.5, right? I'm going to use an old V-band, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld on this 3 transition to 2, and then we're going to go the 2 to a 3-bolt flange to connect to the resonator, just so we can retain the exhaust system on the car until we get it to the shop to do a full 3-inch, because I don't think I'm going to be building the exhaust for this car. I really don't like doing it, but you know, my brother doesn't mind taking this to the shop and just get it done. So 3 to 2.5 to a, this is going to be a 3-bolt 2.25, and that should connect the entire exhaust system together. So once we figure that out, then we can weld the spacer on the top part of the header to connect the bolts to ensure that the downpipe does not slip off the header itself. So that's the whole idea, but we're not going to do that today. If I'm being dead ass honest with you guys, I passed out under the car a little bit after test fitting that downpipe, and we fell into the night. But we are done as far as this goes. Header installed, and the fitment a little more than I a little more than I anticipated as far as, you know, relocating all the things we've shown in today's video, but promising. It's very promising. And redoing some of this stuff, not a big deal. As mentioned, heater hose, fuel line, brake. This is probably going to be the most dreading thing for me, but you know, like I said, I've done this a million times before, so not a big deal. Probably something I'm going to take care of off camera because I want to focus on just getting it done. But header from S1, man, big shout out to the fam from Florida, S1Built, for always coming through with some solid products. And this only confirms that it fits the EF chassis, as long as you guys don't have the weird stuff that we did here. But I'm very stoked about it, because this is probably going to flow a lot better than what we had right there. And I mean, that worked just as good, but it's just, I feel like it's very restrictive with an all motor. You know, if you want to make some really good power, you gotta give it all the bolt-ons you can give it. You know what I'm saying? Especially all motor. K series love to breathe, take in a lot of air, and it needs to relieve as fast as it takes it in, especially because this car is supercharged with the 3-inch downpipe to hopefully the new 3-inch exhaust system. This thing should flow a lot better and make a little bit more power. This car was on a 3-pound before. We upgraded the pulley, and it should be making about 10 now. We're going to be swapping to a K24 crank pulley to try to squeeze a little bit more PSI out of it. And I do have a Honda 4-bar map sensor, so it's ready to rock and roll for when time comes. But this header, I'm really curious to see what this car is going to do on a dyno after the fact. There's still a few more things we're going to change in the bay, but you know, we'll kind of chip away at it as we go. But as far as this goes, we're making a lot of progress. So I'm about to wrap it up for tonight. I'm going to clean up a little bit more, and then you know, we'll see you guys at the workbench. So I do have the header marked right here, right there. So when we pull the header back off, we're gonna attach this back together, and then we're gonna weld the spacer on. I did talk to a buddy of mine, and his company does do Cerakoting, so I need to get that spacer welded on before we send it off to get Cerakoted. I'd rather just Cerakote it to contain the heat rather than the heat wrap, because I really like the consistency look of the runner instead of, you know, stainless, heat wrap, stainless, you know what I mean? So my argon shows up on Monday. Shout out to JL Welding. They are gonna send out a bottle on Monday, and then we'll get back to welding that and a whole bunch of other things that's just been on standby. But as far as this video goes, we made a ton of progress. We got rid of the fuel pressure regulator on the firewall, and I actually got this package late from Submit Racing, which contains all of the fittings that we need for the return line, so we can get the fuel system buttoned up. We originally relocated the prop valve, but it wasn't enough, and then we also redid the heater hoses for the heater core, which looked great, but now we have to change it again. But regardless, we got a good idea now on how we're gonna redo everything now that the header fits. Shout out to S1 once again, link in the description below. But I'm excited because technically the header was the last big thing I needed to do aside from the transmission. And once this car is back on the ground, all buttoned up, ready to rock and roll, it should go to the alignment shop and then get the new exhaust put on, because we're not gonna we're not gonna chance it with trying to make a little more power with the 2.5 exhaust. I'd rather just go full 3 just to eliminate back pressure or whatever the case may be from the previous tunes, and hopefully we can squeeze a little bit more out of my brother's car. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, this car was supposed to be turbocharged. I kind of hinted it a little bit in the last couple of videos, but my brother decided the game plan, what we were gonna do with the supercharge and everything. His CRV might be up for sale, and the whole supercharger switching over to that car, it's gonna change. So he was like, you know what, in the meantime, since I do have the Bull Boost turbo kit sitting on standby, he was like, let's just maximize the supercharger and see what we can squeeze out of it. So that's what we're doing. We're doing some changes to his setup to see if we can try to make a little bit more power, or closer to 3, if not into the 300s. As far as this video goes, we're gonna wrap it up right here. I hope you guys enjoy the progress update on my brother's car with the S1 all-wheel drive spec header. If you guys did, be sure to leave a thumbs up, and if you guys want to stick around for more shenanigans here on the driveway, because we're really just trying to shoot for that EF2 to come home. So if you guys want to see more shenanigans on the driveway, be sure to hit the subscribe button. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.